You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That slaps. As the kids say, that slaps.
It was a bop.
It was a bop. A banger.
A banger. Bangers and mash. Something. Or something.
Or tucked in. Or tucked out.
Possibly. Oh, my word. My word, my word, my word.
My word.
Be kind to all. So says the mug.
So it says, drinking my peace tea.
Ooh, my word. Speaking of peace, I started listening to it. It's been kind of interesting so far. It's mainly interesting to me because I have listened to both of these folks individually on different things a decent amount. But on the Premiere Unbelievable YouTube, they just posted an episode where they had whether you call them debates or just conversations, I don't know, but they had Beezy, Brian's on, and they had Andrew Huranich on there, but they were talking about just war and nonviolence. And that's been interesting so far.
Yeah.
So, because I didn't really expect, I was a little surprised, I guess, that Andrew Huranich was a just war guy.
Yeah, I actually would have thought, when you were sitting there describing that, I would have thought that those were two guys that probably had the same view, so why did they pick those two?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it is really interesting. It's been pretty interesting so far. But
from what I know about Zond, I would say he's probably pretty anti-war.
Yes.
To put it mildly.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of funny because I went back and was re-listening to Farewell to Mars from Brian Zahn, which is his book on nonviolence. Mars being like the god of war. Farewell, that's the whole topic of the book, is nonviolence, basically. And I had
wrote the book on it.
Yeah. And I literally just finished re-listening to it today. And then they posted that.
Yeah.
Talking about. So that was kind of interesting, the way that worked out.
It's a pretty good voice to be listening to on the topic, I'd say.
I think so.
I think so as well.
I do really respect Andrew's scholarship and stuff, though. I know him mainly just from like Universalist arguments, and he does a bang up job with that. So I'm interested to see what he's going to say.
I was kind of curious I was trying to think through where I have heard him, because I knew I had heard some things. You've mentioned him more time, like you've obviously listened to him more than I have, but I've definitely heard him on a couple of podcasts, but I couldn't remember until you said Universalism. I was like, oh yeah, okay, now I'm placing him.
Yeah, I read his book too, that Once Loved, Always Loved, which is his book on Christian Universalism, apocatastasis. But
one of the funner words to say, actually.
Yeah, if you cannot screw it up.
Hip hop anonymous.
You give him easy ones. Well, I don't have peace tea, but I have Diet Dew in my Margaritaville.
Those are two things that bring you peace, though. Margaritaville and Diet Dew.
Yes. It's my vibe.
I went 3 sachets of the peace tea.
Oh, 3 satch, huh?
I don't know what's in it, but I feel pretty peaceful.
You don't know what's in it?
Now, I also took some ashwagandha. So this is the most chill that you'll ever get me.
Does ashwagandha chill you out?
Supposed to be, yeah.
Apparently, it's just good for all kind of stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's super.
Yeah, I've thought about getting some. It's supposed to have all kinds of good benefits.
I take it not as often as I should, but semi regularly.
Hmm.
I'm just full of all kinds of herbs and spices.
How many is it in the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe?
Like 13.
Something like that. I'm wanting to say 11.
Maybe 11. I don't know. I've never been a big KFC guy.
Me either. Not really.
Yeah. I did when I was in college. I went on some trip on one of my college courses. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember it was Mr. Stan McKinney, who was one of my favorite professors. Fantastic professor, Campbellsville University. But for one of his classes, he took us to a trip, and we stopped at some place. It was like the original KFC. I want to say it was in like Shelbyville, Kentucky, maybe. I don't know. It was somewhere in Kentucky, but
yeah,
it was supposed to be like the original KFC or like the old Colonel Sanders place. But it was pretty good. It was a cool experience.
Mm.
It was obviously there was only a few of us. It was a small class. I think it was like I want to say we went to some sort of photography or art museum in Louisville because he did like photojournalism. He was a journalism teacher, and he did like photojournalism and stuff like that. So it was probably something to do with that.
I don't know if I'm making this up or not, but I have vague memories of my grandpa getting KFC for us. If I'm not mistaken, at one time, and maybe this is still a thing, I cannot tell you the last time I had KFC. But I think at one time they had these like little mini chicken sandwich things. They may have actually been called Chicken Littles.
If not, then they really missed the boat.
Or I don't know if that's what we just called them, or if that was their actual name, like on the menu.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not, like I said, never been a big KFC guy. My family never did partake a lot. So
yeah. Oh, you know what? We had our Thanksgiving meal today at work. They Old Hickory catered it.
It's pretty good. Old Hickory's never let me down.
It was all really good, actually. I went to my last break, and there was some extra desserts left over. I may have had another slice of pecan pie.
Carb loading.
Pecan pie is my favorite pie.
Pecan pie is really good. Oh, at Moonlight, they've got the chocolate pecan pie. Oh, it's so good.
I love the butterscotch pecan pie, I think is what it is, from Patty's. Yeah.
I've had that one before, too.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, if you can't tell by this conversation, my diet's been going just great.
I know. I have kind of lost motivation the last week or so.
I really just got out of the habit of tracking the stuff. That happens, man. It's so easy to not do it. It's such a pain in the rear end to do it. And I just kind of got out of the habit. So,
well, I was working all that overtime, and the overtime really did kind of screw me over because by the time I would get home, I would just like be like, if like take that sound and just make that a mood, and that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I feel that. I can feel that mood. I feel it. I know that mood just from the noise.
So I couldn't find it in myself to work out those days. And I don't know why I am like this, but it's like if I can't work out, it's like it's almost like I don't see the point. Like you should buckle down harder on your diet if you're not going to be working out. But for whatever reason, I refuse to do that. I always do the opposite. I'm like, well, F it. If I can't lift, then I'm just going to eat 7,000 calories today. And that's what I do.
I was pretty proud of myself. I had basically 30 minutes from the time I clocked out of my work yesterday before I needed to leave, like here. So I had 30 minutes. I came downstairs. I got a little 15-minute workout in, shoulder workout, went up, changed my clothes, took Wally out, did all that, and was out the house, out of the door on time, but still got to work out. You know, there was a part of me that was like, well, there's no point even going down to the gym. You only got 15 minutes. But I got a full shoulder workout in, man. So I was pretty proud that, because normally that would be my stance, would be like, why even bother? So what are you going to do in 15 minutes? But I was like, no, going to be 15 minutes better. That's what I'm going to be. And ultimately, I did 4 sets of lat raises. I did 4 sets of seated shoulder press. I did 4 sets of front raises and 4 sets of upright rows. I mean, 16 sets of shoulders in 15 minutes. It's decent work. I hit all the different angles of the shoulders, and so
I had thought about trying to squeeze a chest workout in before I came here, but I spent a little bit of time prepping.
Look at you. I'm so proud of you.
Are you? I hope that, and maybe I shouldn't have said that, because depending on what I say tonight, people might be like, if that's you coming prepared, guy, then it's a good thing you prepared.
No, I mean, you prepared the questions. Like I did last week. I prepared those questions, and then you did those this week.
Chat prepared those questions for me.
Well, you put in the effort for it. You have to guide the chat.
Yes.
So, yeah, you put in some work this week. You prepared for it. I also did. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Much like what you said. If that's you preparing, then may God have mercy on your soul.
See, today, it's been, of course, this is just how it goes, but my mind hasn't really been on the healing stuff as much today as it has been in the last couple days leading up to this. But, I mean, it was a little bit earlier today. Like, I actually listened to a lecture series from Chris Green on healing, or where he talks about several things, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
And so my mind was on it a little bit, but I've been on some of the nonviolent stuff again, and I don't know. I also tried to finish listening to the Jonah lessons, those sessions for this week.
Yona.
Keeping up with that sad study, trying to.
I mean, all I'm saying, if you're interested in nonviolence, I know a book called the Gita addresses that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't really know this beforehand, because I don't really. That's not my background, right? That's not the religion that I'm familiar with. It's a part of the Hindu. I don't even know what the right word for it is. Scripture is the only word I know, but I don't know if that's really accurate. But it's actually sort of
Sacred writing.
Yeah. So the Gita is actually, Bhagavad Gita, it is just a portion of a larger text, which is just a portion of their compilation of texts. So I didn't realize that. I did a little research into the background and the history of it, where it came from, and how the people of that religion, the Veda and the Hindu religions view it. I mean, the only way that I have, the background that I have to view sacred writings or scriptures, is the way that Christians view the Bible, right? So I don't know how other people read their texts.
Which even that is kind of all over the place.
Right.
Kind of depends on who you ask.
So I was just trying to get a feel. I was asking chat some questions about it, just like, how do people read this? Like, how does it fit into the larger framework of everything, just trying to get some background to it. But,
yeah, I looked up something this week that had to do with the Gita. I don't remember what it was, though. It may have been... you sent me something, and I went and looked it up.
I sent you something, and your response was no. And I was like, oh, well, okay.
Well, I think the question was, have you ever read the Gita?
Well, then I
So
followed
this is-
that up though with some stuff of why I was asking the question.
Oh, I don't even remember.
It's okay. I was like, well, fine then. Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
I haven't had as much time lately at work to respond to stuff, and if I don't respond to stuff immediately, I forget about it.
Being an adult sucks,
Yes,
basically.
basically, yeah. Bay sack.
You know, sometimes I'm a little bit disappointed that because I've had several, it happens all the time, what you were just talking about, where like we'll establish a topic and that'll be like what I want to talk about. And for like Monday, Tuesday, most of Wednesday, I'll be fired up about that topic and looking into it. And then by the time Thursday afternoon comes around, I've already just moved on to something different, you know?
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time. But I've thought about it and I'm sort of a little bit of a loose cannon. You never know what you're going to get with me. So if we'd recorded one of those other days, who knows what you would get? And who knows what we're going to get today? But
Right. Maybe we should start picking our topics like a day ahead instead of. Oh,
well, the good thing about the topic this time, which you've already said, is healings.
Helens.
But it's number one. It's something that's kind of always on my mind. Not really, but it factors into a whole lot of stuff depending on how people talk about it. Right. So it's sort
Right.
of something that I have thought a lot about over the years, even, but recently as well. So it is something that kind of interests me. It's something that I've thought a lot about and put a lot of time and effort into thinking through. And so even when it's not something that is like burning and like, well, we need to talk about this, like I feel like I could always talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so there you go.
So healing.
Healings.
That's what I'm going to name the episode. However you can type out the thing that I just did there, that's what I'm going to name the
Well,
episode.
that's going to be your responsibility. So
I'll have to figure it out somehow. Somehow I'll manage.
it was funny that I opened up my Facebook this morning and just the first picture I see, the first post on my little timeline is like that little meme that somebody had created. It said, something to the effect of, "Hey man, are you interested in going to the Dominion and Healings conference with us?" And then it was a sign of a storefront that said 0% interest. I was like, that's hilarious considering our topic that we're recording tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, to be honest, I don't know how much interest I would have in going to something that was titled like a healing conference.
Yeah.
Either, maybe it would depend. It would depend on what was going on there. It would depend.
It would depend, I guess. Yeah. I feel like pretty much any scenario I'm not going to want to go. But
well, the reason I hesitated with that is because I just talked about how like Chris Green did like several sessions of giving lectures on healings, and like I would go to something like that.
right.
But like if it's like one of those like things where like dude's got a book about like,
I mean, if it's called a Dominion and Healing Conference, it's a prayer line, laying hands on people, falling out into we're going to pray for these people. You got people that are going to be planted out in the crowd that can now miraculously walk and all of that. Like, I'm not going to that.
yeah, I mean, if it's something that I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. There's a certain vibe.
Listen to you bringing vibes into the conversation. Is this the first episode that you've brought up vibes before me?
Maybe. But there's a certain vibe about that type of thing that it's just not my vibe. You know, I'm all for, let me just say immediately that I am actually all for praying for people for healing, and I believe that God heals, and and all the stuff. I'm not particularly interested in going to like a conference or something like that where someone is like giving you the 10 surefire ways to make sure your prayers are always answered or whatever, and they happen to have a book that they're selling to everybody for $17.99 or whatever, and it's like, all right,
Right.
like that doesn't interest me at all.
The one thing that I'm a little bit interested in on this topic today is I feel like I genuinely have no idea what you believe. And I feel like in a lot of times, most of the time, I feel like I have a pretty good, and sometimes I'm wrong, but sometimes I feel like I do have a pretty solid, at least what ballpark you fall in. Even if I don't know the specifics or I've got a few things wrong that you need to correct, or like, I feel like I generally know you pretty well in your theology. This one, I have no idea. I don't even have an estimate. I feel like I wouldn't be comfortable if somebody was to come up to me and ask me what your opinion was on this. I would have no idea what to say. I would refrain from giving an answer.
Which is interesting because we have talked about it before.
Well, that's part of the confusion of it, is I've heard different, or what I interpret as different things from you to where I can't pin down exactly what any of it means, which is why I'm interested in having the conversation.
Well,
And I'm not saying that, let me say before, I'm not saying that as a negative thing, because you'll get that out of me too. Not necessarily on this topic, but just for multiple reasons. Sometimes it's because we talk about something, I'm actively thinking through it. So my mind has changed. You know what I mean? So you will hear me say something one week, and then the next week I'll say something totally different. That's because I've thought about it and changed my mind on it. Or, so I don't say that as a negative towards you in any way. I'm just saying I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that my mind has changed on the subject as much as I would say that, like, I do feel like I maybe have better language to explain what I've kind of always intuited about it or thought about it.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. Just coming to a more, maybe perhaps a way to say it is a more full understanding of what it is that you believe, or a better way of communicating it, or any of those potential.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a pure change of mind, depending on the topic or whatever it is. I mean,
Right.
but there's multiple reasons as to why people could be hearing conflicting messages in the things that we say, or just not able to pin down what it is that we're trying to say. So,
Right.
but yeah, I don't know.
And I mean, I guess over time, my mind has changed in comparison to like where I was in my deconstruction. Like,
Right.
I have changed my mind on the subject before, but
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would say, I don't know. And part of it for me just depends on the day you get me. I mean,
Right.
and what I mean, I've talked about that some, especially here lately. But depending on the day, some days I'm more skeptical than others. You know what I mean? Like some days I'm more open to the. It just depends on how my faith is feeling that day. I don't know, but some days some days I'm more open to the God language of it all, and sometimes I'm not. And that's just the days when my faith feels like it's, I've said before, some days I feel like I'm more of an agnostic, and it's those more agnostical days when that's what I'm trying to say, essentially.
Yeah, I guess the question I would have is that even like what you're naming as faith or lack thereof, is that even faith?
Right. And I didn't
yeah.
even, I mean, and that was just a lack of a better way of putting it to where everybody would know what I was saying,
Right.
So,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know. It just depends on the day. This is what you're going to get out of me. But, yeah,
I'm all congested.
I have been.
Can't breathe.
I'm much better today, but I have been.
I can't breathe.
Breeb.
So,
It's too bad that copyright exists, because if we could use Faith, the song, by either George Michael or Limp Bizkit, then that would have been ideal for the intro to this episode, or outro. But
you've got to have faith.
That was the LB version.
Mm. Well, how do we want to do this? We want to just pull up the questions that
We could just fist fight it.
I don't want to.
Yeah, me either. I drunk peace tea. I'm unable to throw a punch.
That's how PST works. It makes you physically unable to throw punches at people.
It's like when liar, when he tries to tell a lie and he just can't. It just won't come. This pen is. You just can't do it. That's how it is. You drink peace tea. You just literally cannot be violent.
Mm. We need to get the entire world on PST immediately.
We have to infiltrate the water system.
Somehow. All right. Well.
Yeah, I definitely think, I mean, the questions were a fine outline. I think right off the bat,
Yeah.
and this is the way that you did it in the questions, which is perfect. But right off the bat, we have to throw out some definitions, or we have to define what it is we're talking about. Because I think a lot of what I have to say depends on what in the freak it means when we say healing, or like what are we even talking about tonight? Yeah. That's going to shape my entire discussion.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, so what do we mean when we say healing? I guess I would want to make a distinction between healing and healings.
Right. I agree.
Because I think healing, I think the conference thing that you're talking about, that's healings.
Right.
But healing is wholeness. It's sozo. It's a process, actually. It's something that, I mean, like there's the old thing, like time heals all wounds. Like the healing is something that takes time. There's a process involved in healing. But healings are generally what we mean when we say healings are something that's like happens instantaneous. It's an event. It's not a process. It's an event.
Right.
That happens.
That's why when we have texted about the topic, because we've had several conversations about it, I always try to frame what I'm talking about with like the word. I've started using miraculous healings. I used to say supernatural, and I still kind of think it's interchangeably, but I think miraculous gets it across more. Like what I mean is those sort of, this person had cancer, we prayed for them, and God zapped that tumor right out of them. Like the miraculous style of healing, which is what I think what you're talking about with the healings, right?
Uh-huh.
Whereas for me, I agree with your definition. When I speak of healing, I believe sozo, wholeness, like a restoration, reunion, like all of those are aspects of what I would consider to be healing, which is funny enough because I do not believe in an interventionist style of God. I don't believe in an interventionist God who's supernaturally or miraculously choosing to heal some and physically and not others, or allowing some people to suffer, and not, like, I don't believe in any of that. But healing is central to my entire spirituality. Like, to me, that's the entire point. That's why I follow the path of Jesus, or attempt to, is because I believe it leads to sozo, wholeness, healing, like a life and life abundant, right? Like that's, to me, is what are all synonymous with the word healing. And so when I speak of healing in my own spirituality or my own theological framework, that's what I mean by it. Not necessarily what you're saying, these events of miraculous, where the laws of physics, the laws of nature have been superseded to produce an outcome that is more comfortable to us in our flesh.
So I actually believe in both.
Right.
I mean, I think I'm 100% with you on the healing. Healings, I do think, occur. I think that they are real things that can happen. But I think that we have a lot of misconceptions about them that cause confusion. Like, because I wouldn't say that God heals some and not others. I wouldn't say that. I would say that God always heals and is always healing. It's just that what we don't. I think that we're not always aware of the healing that's happening. Sometimes it appears to us more obvious than at other times. But I think that God is always healing. It's not like God is picking and choosing who is and isn't healed, or that God is like your faith is somehow making God be better than he would have been otherwise. You know? Like, you're looking at me funny.
I'm just trying to comprehend all the words that are coming at me right now. Well, I mean, it really is why I said I just genuinely don't know what you believe in this aspect, right? Like, I don't really, because, as I suspect, as always, it's because of both. Like, I'm sort of in the middle in between two worlds, and kind of straddling two worlds and playing that middle. And I do have a hard time understanding how it all fits together. You know what I'm saying? So I'm listening to you and trying to understand. So if my face looks funny, that's why I'm just trying to put the pieces together.
Trying to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth.
Well, no, because even in just what you just said, like, I think we believe the same thing. I don't think I disagree with you, but I still don't know. I still am unsure based on the language being said. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's what I mean, really, when I have a hard time with it. And and probably the same could be said about me. Maybe you don't even understand what I'm saying, to where maybe we really do believe the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe to help, maybe I can find the language to explain it in a way that makes more sense. But, like, I guess what I mean by that, I'm assuming that what you were confused about more was when I said that I don't think God heals some and not others.
I mean, that is part of it, because there is a certain aspect of it to where it's like, no, I believe in healing. I believe in these miraculous, miracle, physical healings, but I don't think that God is picking and choosing whenever some people just don't receive that healing. Like, because I would say, because I don't think God heals like that. I think that it's about the sozo, that wholeness, which sometimes can perhaps be a healing of a body, I guess, but it's mostly, I would say, about the healing of the inner man, the true self, you know what I mean, for me. And so, I don't know. I think that is the aspect of it that I have a hard time understanding. It was like, if we're saying that, like, no, there is a God that I am praying to, like, please send healing to this person. Well, then, like, no, I think that we are kind of propagating this idea that God exists out there and is choosing, I guess maybe I'll heal this person if somebody else will pray. Like the whole Facebook post, like, if I get 100,000 likes on this Facebook post, I will heal this person's cancer. Like, obviously,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's not, I mean, I think that's not how I view it at all.
right.
To me, that sounds a wee bit cynical, perhaps, but
Maybe. I don't really think I'm cynical on this one. I'm a pretty cynical person just in nature, naturally, but, like, I think on this topic I'm not really, but maybe I am. I don't know.
I mean, I guess I just think that, like, I'm having a hard time thinking. Having a hard time concentrating.
I know I guess in part, maybe this is what you're naming as cynicism, is I am pretty sensitive to the language used around this topic, just naturally, because I feel like we say a lot of things because they sound good without thinking all the way through the implications of what we're saying, and what we end up kind of propagating is nonsense. And I mean, ultimately, not we, when I say we, I don't necessarily mean me and you, but the way that I've heard this topic talked about previously is in that way. If God is a being externally, we're praying to him, God, please send healing to this person, as if God's out there choosing who to heal and who not to. But then this physical healing that we're praying for happens at the clip of random chance, but then we will say every time it happens, yeah, see, if we just pray, it'll actually happen, and God still heals, and He's still in the business of healing. But then, if that's the aspect that we're going to take, then we have to also, every time that it doesn't happen, like, be consistent with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I'm sensitive to, is because I feel like in a lot of ways, people have higher expectations for me as a flawed human being than they have for their own God that they're propagating. And it's like, I don't really have a lot of patience for that anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm thinking is that it's not, to me, it's not a matter of God healed this person and didn't heal this one. It's a matter of God always heals, and sometimes that healing is obvious to us, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes those healings are the beginnings of a process of healing that, again, is not obvious to us. I think sometimes we, like in Romans, it says, we don't know how to pray as we ought to. Like, that's I guess how it's worded in the KJV, but like ought. But like, honestly, like, we don't always know how to pray for what is actually needful. And like, I guess what I'm ultimately trying to point to is that I'm more and more I'm suspicious of what it means to be healed, and like if we're praying for something and it doesn't happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that God's not answering the prayers. It may mean that, like, there is a deeper healing needed than take my diabetes away. Like, there may be that there's something else going on, a deeper healing that's needed, that is occurring. The true thing that needs healed in this person is being healed, but it's not the thing that we're praying for, because we don't know how to pray for the things that we actually need to pray for. Like, unless the Spirit prays through us, right? Makes intercession through us. And whenever Jesus says, he's comparing earthly fathers with the heavenly Father, and he says, if you're who among you, if your child asked for bread, you'd give him a stone? Well, the thing is, I think that we think a lot. I think sometimes we think we're asking for bread, but we're asking for a stone. We just can't see it because we don't know what to pray for. We don't know how to pray as we ought to, because we're asking for stones, but God only ever gives us bread. Sometimes we confuse the two for each other. And so we think we're getting a stone, but it's actually bread, And so I'm just very suspicious of, like, and what does it even mean to be, like, when we're talking about healings, healthy, like, what does it mean to be healthy? Like, is it like what Jesus, was it his life? Was Jesus ever sick? Did he have, like, what is the perfect image of health that we're comparing this other person to, and saying, well, their health is in jeopardy, and so we need to pray for their health? Well, like, what is the standard that we're looking to, for that health? Like, someone that has, like, folks that have, like, Down syndrome or autism or something like that. Is that a disease that needs healing, or is that, like, I don't think so. Uh, I don't know. I'm more and more I'm suspicious of our own ability to always discern what needs to be prayed for, what actually needs to be healed, and in our own ability to discern what was and wasn't a successful healing in that situation.
As I was hearing you talk, jotted down a question that came to my mind, which is not one of the questions that we prepared, but it just naturally came to me as part of what you were saying there. And I say that not because I don't disagree. I don't actually disagree with anything that you said there. Like what I was critiquing wasn't aimed at you necessarily, like
Right.
because that's why I said I think we actually believe the same thing. So it wasn't like I don't take an issue, but I am curious to see how you would answer this because I don't. The question came to me while you were talking, and so I don't know how I would answer it either. But my question was, if God's action is always towards healing, and sometimes that's not what we pray for because we don't know what we ought to pray for, then how does prayer factor into this equation at all? If God is going to not give us what we ask for, but give us what we need instead, what is prayer doing? What is prayer? Or how does it factor into this equation?
Well, I think ultimately, if what our prayers are meant to do is to connect us intimately with the God who heals, the God who is the healer, the Christ, the great physician. And so, and whenever Jesus prays, and most famously in the garden, he says, "Not my will, but your will be done." And so I think that if we are praying, the Lord's Prayer is a great one too. I don't know how many of us actually pray the Lord's Prayer regularly, but like I try to pray it pretty regular. Like every time I get down to pray, I will usually, or not get down, I don't always get down to pray, but like whenever I pray, I usually incorporate the Lord's Prayer into it because, let your kingdom come and let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But we don't always know what God's will is on earth as it is in heaven. We know that it's his will to heal. And we know that, or at least in my belief is that in the resurrection, in the age to come, that everything that is supposed to be healed will be healed, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, on every and all levels. Whatever healing is meant for us will be accomplished at that point. But we don't always see all of that here and now. We see elements of it. And that's why I think that like Jesus didn't heal every single person he ever came in contact with in his life, but he did heal some. And so I may be getting ahead of myself. The question was
just on prayer, like what does, because you'd said that you do believe in praying for people, laying hands on people to pray for them or whatever. I used that specific example when you brought it up, so I assume that you're in line with that, and that's fine. Everybody come put your hands on this person, pray for their physical healing. Like, so what does that actually do if there is a way to hear what has been said and like, well, God's not listening to our requests anyway. He's giving us what we need, not what we want. So what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, that's where the question originates from. And really part of it is just because as I've deconstructed and reconstructed and my theological framework has changed, prayer is one of those things that I have taken on a whole new meaning for me. And it's a difficult aspect when you're still operating in a more evangelical framework. You know what I mean? Like, because I view God as the ground of being. I don't view God as an external being. It's not a person that I'm not petitioning for good health. Like, there's no point in me, God, please send healing to me. Like, God's already working towards the healing, and I know that. For me, prayer isn't about requesting healing. It's about connecting to the ground that's already within me, knowing, to align my own being with the reality that healing is already occurring, right? Like, so for me, healing isn't not healing, prayer isn't like petitioning for something or asking for something of this external being, obviously, right? I think that it's the ground within. So my take on prayer is a little bit different. I think for me it's more about contemplative prayer. It's about meditation and that sort of silent turning within, which I don't do enough, by the way. But
I actually don't think it is different than what I was saying. Just different language, maybe. Because,
no,
like,
no,
I'm not.
I didn't mean different from you. I meant different from what I had previously held, which was that's
Right.
what I was trying to describe was how my framework had changed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I would say that too. I mean, the only thing that I would add to what you're saying is like, um, because I view prayers to God as prayers to Christ in me. Like it is the spirit that dwells in me is God. And so it's not a praying to something outside of me somewhere like over there in the corner of the room instead of inside of me.
Right.
But it's also not just a getting in touch with the thing in me. It's me recognizing that that same thing is in this person that I'm putting my hands on. And I'm saying that, like, please, whatever it is inside of this person that needs to be healed, like, I'm believing that you're already in the process and you will complete that. So, but what we're praying, I guess, is that it would manifest here and now to whatever extent, you know, we can see the kingdom come here and now. Let's see it. Let's do it, you know? And to me, it is a prayer. It's not just like praying to something in me. It's actually more so a prayer in those instances. It's always intercessory. It's always for the other, you know. So it's not necessarily. It's not praying for me. It's not like praying to a God outside over there somewhere to come and do something. And it's also not a prayer to the thing that's just in me, but it's a prayer for this person, and I know that God is in work in them also, not just in me, but in them as well. And whatever way I can participate in that, even if it's just bringing, like, physically going to the person to, in a sense, bring them to Jesus, just like more often than not in the Gospels, people don't go to Jesus. Other people bring them to Jesus. Like if we're going to go by the sheer numbers of people that are healed, like a lot of the healings that happen are people being brought to Jesus rather than people making their way to him necessarily.
Right.
And so I do think that it is needful for us to be intercessors in that way, to pray for others, to lay hands on them and pray for them and pray that God's will be done.
I have I mean, my take on that is slightly different from yours, but only in a way that that is like still. I don't know what I want to like how I want to say it because I don't want to just be like, well, I like that view, but like, yeah, I mean, like I have a slightly different take on it, but I don't like. It's not like I hate your view on it or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm not. So for me, what that intercessing on behalf of another person or that relation that you're talking about between you and that person being prayed for is still an internal work within me, right? Like, and what I mean by that is, I believe that's how prayer works is when I turn inward and I understand this ground of being, the divine ground that's inherent with all beings. What that should do is empower me or move me to do what I can to provide that healing, be the hands and feet of God, right? So whether that means, I mean, I'm not a physical doctor, but maybe that means I can provide monetary support, or maybe that means I can provide emotional support, or maybe the only thing I can really do to provide my role in this person's healing is send them a card saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, or a text saying that maybe that's all I can do this day. But for me, that's what it's more about. Like, again, I've already said it, and it's just what it is, what it is. I don't believe that we have a interventionist God who's going to just intervene the laws of nature, physics, or whatever. Like, I think it is what it is. I think we see healing, like physical healing, all the time. It occurs through medicine. It occurs through doctors and surgery. Sometimes it's through our own immune system. Sometimes we don't know why it happens. It is that a miracle or not? I don't know. But like, I personally, for me, I just don't believe in an interventionist God who supersedes those laws. To me, what praying for other people should do is still turning in, connecting that ground, understanding that ground within all, and then acting on that impulse, right? It's because I'm not waiting for God to supernaturally heal that person. I'm participate. I am being the hands and feet, and yeah. And I think that's, again, like you said, jumping forward. I don't want to jump too far forward because we have questions about community, at the end of the outline. But that, to me, that's ultimately what the community is for and about. That's why I get so frustrated in the conversations when there's school shootings, and the conversation is always thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. It's just like we're so disconnected from it that we're just sending up prayers as if this God's going to violate the laws of nature and just melt all the guns away, or do do something that's going to supernaturally block these bullets. So like, no, the point of prayer, if you're actually praying, we would be doing something. We would be putting that prayer into action, like from my perspective. And I apply that same logic towards healing. And I think, knowing you probably agree with that.
Yeah.
You just
I think it's
add
both.
add a little more.
It's just both for me.
Yeah.
It's I do believe that God intervenes. I mean, good God, I think the entirety of my theology is dependent upon a God who intervenes. Like, I mean, the cross is an intervention. The resurrection is an intervention. The incarnation, that's an intervention. That is, from my perspective at least, that is God intervening in the world. It is God sending us himself to rescue the world through this man Jesus. It is. Yeah, I think if I believed that God didn't intervene, then I would believe that the world is absolutely doomed.
Yeah, and that's really actually that's why I was like, when I was looking through some and I was thinking about this, I was like, man, there's going to be so much for me to try to like process this and try to, because it's almost impossible to deconstruct and reconstruct an entire theology on air. You know what I mean? But like because I don't frame it because I use the term non-interventionist as if nothing but nature happens. And that is true, but it just depends on the frame that you look at it. Because for me, the story of Jesus is the story about the segregation between what we perceive as holy and what we perceive as unclean, what we perceive as sacred and what we perceive as secular. This is the joining it, like it's destroying those walls. So for whatever reason, we tend to, or I say we, and I'm trying to get better about that. I have previously tended to view reality as though there was the sacred and the secular. There was this divine between, for example, divine miraculous healing and a doctor treating someone to the best of their ability, and that person receiving physical healing through the treatment of their team of doctors, right? Like, those are two separate things. And I don't believe that anymore. Like, I believe that those things that we chalk up to just nature are divine acts. If it's working towards wholeness, if it's working towards healing, those acts are divine acts. And so, in a sense, I also would affirm interventionalism from that perspective, but I don't think interventionalism is the right word, because that still upholds the paradigm of there is a secular that the sacred is interjecting itself within, when I think that it's just that the barrier between the two doesn't exist.
Yeah. I just think it's both.
Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to clarify for me, because that's something that's come up even when we've talked about, and this has been a long time ago, but when we would talk about like the divinity of Jesus, right? And like, because it's easy for people to hear what I say and say, well, Nathan doesn't think that Jesus is divine. Well, that's not true because I think all humans are divine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, like, sure, I reject some of the unique claims of divinity, but it's also more than just saying he's just a man. You know what I mean? Because I don't believe there's a such thing as just a man. Like it's a whole new paradigm or a way of speaking about creation, but it does add a little. At least it adds it for me. It's a little bit to it, you know. So it's not when I say I don't believe in an interventionist God. That doesn't mean it doesn't devolve into just for me at least. It doesn't devolve into ultimately it would be just an atheism. You know what I mean? Like that's not what I mean by it.
Yeah. It's hard for me to see how it doesn't lead there personally, just if I'm being honest. But yeah, I mean, I think that like the doctor that works,
Yeah.
like I think that is like, yeah, I believe that Christ is in
Right.
all and is all and in all, as Colossians 3:11 says. So like, I think that, yeah, I think that God's at work in the doctors, and I think that but I also think that God does what you would call miraculous or supernatural.
Right.
But I think that we would have to talk about what it even means to what is natural.
See, that conversation that we were just in actually is super interesting to me, which is more something I've spent more time thinking on just in recently, which is just the differences between your personality and mine, the way our minds work, and the why we are the way that we are. Because it's funny that you said, you know, based on out of my worldview, it's hard to see how for you it doesn't lead to some form of atheism, and for me, it's the exact opposite. It's
Right.
literally the opposite, because all of this talk of miraculous and like the further that we get from the more closer to that top down epistemology that me and you were talking about offline, the more I'm like, I think I just don't believe any of this anymore. Like that literally pushes me towards atheism. Like the more that we talk about these miraculous, like that just, to me, it leads me to atheism. Like more, that's why I am where I am. Is this is the way I've had to go to to avoid atheism. So it's unique. But to me, that's interesting how different we are in that regard. How things resonate so differently with us, and why we are that way. That's not our topic at all. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately because I find it super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just an interesting thing that we frame. We really do have so much agreement, but there's things that we definitely disagree on, and they are big things. But it's just, I don't know. I thought I had some insight there. I don't think I do though.
Yeah, I think that ultimately we agree on a lot, and that factors it does factor into our framework, what we've had to adapt to, which this is where our different personalities and the things that resonate with us differently come into play, is the how. I think ultimately we have a similar vision and believe a lot of the similar things, but in order to make things work out, we've had to take different paths because the hows didn't work for us the same way. And part of that, I think, factors into what I was just saying about the different kind of epistemologies and just the different kind of ways our brains work. Just different people. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting because like I mean, I've said it several times so far, but like in this, it's going to continue. For me, it's just always both. You know, like it seems to me that like for you, it is this, which means it can't be that. Or maybe I'm not right on that, but so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But like it seems to me that like it's this and not that for you. And if it is that, also, I don't believe anything.
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. But
Right.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just kind of like speaking in generalities, I guess, here. But like for me, it's I affirm almost everything I think that you would say on all those big topics.
Yeah.
But for me, it doesn't end there. It's both. It's not like the divine exists in all, yes, but then Jesus is the definitive revelation of God in man for me. Like he is, and unique in that sense. So like, it's to me, it's not one or the other, but it's both of those things, and that's just one example. But like I've been saying it this whole episode so far that like it's both for me.
Yeah, that's
You know,
generally is your default position is both.
but it is interesting to me that I have no issues affirming both, but you do.
Yeah,
And that is it.
I mean, for me, a lot of it is literally like saying 2 + 2 = 4, except when it equals 5. But it's like, well, no, it's 2 + 2 = 4, and it never equals 5. There's no way. And then it's like, well, no, I'm just gonna just leave it to mystery. 2 + 2 sometimes equals 5. Like, no, it doesn't.
Mm.
If it's 4 or 5, but it's not both. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I think that it's not a matter of 2 + 2 = 4. 2 + 2 = 4 for sure, but I think that sometimes what we're actually thinking, we think we're saying 2 + 2 = 4, but what we're actually saying is 2 + 3 = 4, and we're just wrong about it. That it's not always the twos, and the numbers in the scenario appear to us to be something that maybe they aren't. And so it's not, for me, it's not always a matter of like just denying the reality of it. It's like, what is the actual reality of it? What are the numbers? Is it actually 2 + 2 that we're trying to solve, or is it 3 + 7? Or like, what are the numbers involved here? You know?
but no matter what numbers we use, they equal one thing. They don't equal two different things.
Right.
7 + 3 is 10. It's not 10 and 11.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I'm trying to say is like the numbers, it's not both. It's one or the other, like it's if we're going if 2 + 2 is 4, but what we're really dealing with is 2 + 3, then that's 5. It's not 4 and 5. It's just 5. It's not
Right.
both.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's off topic. So yeah.
Well, where even is my phone? Was that all just the first question?
Yeah.
What was the second one? I'm trying to pull it up here. In Scripture, Jesus sometimes heals instantly and sometimes does not.
Before we move on to the second one, let me read because I wrote a little statement to go with all these. I'm going to read them.
Okay.
So my definitive statement on the question number 1.
Okay. I didn't do this.
When the New Testament speaks of healing, I do not believe it's talking about God overriding nature, but rather it is talking about the restoration of communion within the person, between people, and with God. Boom.
I think the restoration that you're talking about is nature.
Okay.
Just to throw my two cents in there, because I didn't prepare a statement. Let's piggyback off of yours.
Look at you.
Add to, take away.
I mean, when I wrote this statement, I thought, I think Sean's going to be behind this. But again, I don't really know what you think about this topic. So.
All right. Well, so let me see. Let's make sure there's not anything else on one I wanted to talk about. I guess we're good to go on. Number 2, in Scripture, Jesus sometimes heals instantly and sometimes does not. What do those patterns reveal about God's purposes, timing, and the person being healed?
Wait, read that to me one more time.
In Scripture, Jesus sometimes heals instantly and sometimes does not. What do those patterns reveal about God's purposes, timing, and the person being healed? The question here goes on to say, this asks, why not every time? Drawn on stories like the woman with the issue of blood, Paul's thorn in the flesh, delayed healings.
Yeah, I didn't even know that one. I didn't even recognize that one name that was in there.
Yeah, that's why I skipped it.
I was like, I don't even know who that is.
I don't know what that is either. So yeah. In Scripture, Jesus sometimes heals instantly, and sometimes it's not. What about it? You got anything to say about it?
Sometimes God, sometimes Jesus heals instantly. Sometimes he doesn't. What are some examples? What is the country of origin? So I'm thinking about the woman with the issue of blood. She touched the hem of his garment because that was one of the examples given. She touched the hem of his garment, and she was instantly healed.
Yeah.
But Lazarus, he walked 3 days and then healed him. Is that more or less?
Yeah. I think I was thinking more so not like this person was healed instantly and this person was healed but not instantly. I was thinking he heals some people instantly, but some people aren't healed. That's kind of how I was thinking about it. But I guess to go the other way, I'd have to think harder for some examples, I guess.
Well, that's why I was kind of I was like, I don't know. I mean, it seems like pretty well when he heals somebody, it kind of happens pretty well instantly. I mean, that's why I was trying to think through some specific examples of when he doesn't. There probably are. They're just not on the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm sure there are, actually.
But I was thinking about he heals the blindness by spitting in the dirt and rubbing it, and then it's like the guy just can see. He heals the guy at the pool of Bethesda pretty well instantly, the woman with the hem of his garment.
The mud in the eyes one actually might be an example of that because he doesn't see instantly.
Does he not?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Anyway, his vision is blurry at first, right? He sees men as trees walking, and then, there's maybe some other examples like, is it Naaman that washes in the river 7 times?
Well, that was Old Testament. That wasn't Jesus.
Well, it depends. Just depends on who you're asking, I guess.
Yeah.
God. Like he's healed, right? But he goes down 7 times instead of just once,
Right.
There's maybe some examples in there.
Well, I was thinking strictly of just New Testament Jesus passages. Yeah. Anyway, you could look at it the way you were looking at it too, though, because you have to presume in the crowd of people where it specifically says that people were pressing in on each other, that there were someone else had something going on besides this woman with the issue of blood. But the only one, I guess we can't say no one else was healed. It just doesn't, we don't know that. It's not documented. But, but yeah, I guess you could look at it that way too.
She is actually a good example, I think, of that.
Yeah, so the notes that I wrote on this were that, I think for me, it's probably is a little bit different because I don't I think that these are stories, right? Like theological metaphors or symbolic performances more so than like a historical recount. So I don't necessarily think that these are always meant to be read as like snapshots of how God always acts, right? Or like a prescription. This is what God does. More so than they're pointing to that deeper reality of what we were talking about in question 1, right? The deeper reality of healing, like that God, Jesus embodies that God's will is wholeness,
right?
And so. What does that wholeness look like? This is a lot of what you talked about in that first question. What does that wholeness look like?
Right. And she receives both. Actually, in Mark's account, he uses 2 different words for her physical healing and her sozo, her wholeness. Whenever he says, "Daughter, your faith has made you whole," that's sozo. But Mark's account uses actually a different word for, I can't remember the Greek word now for it, but it's I thought I had it, but anyway, it's a separate Greek word for her physical healing of like the issue of blood. So in that instance, she receives both an instant physical healing, but also a healing that had been a long time coming for for everything else, the wholeness. Because, I mean, if you think about her and her specific issue, she has that deeper reality is that she has deep wounds from being an outcast, from being ritually unclean, you know.
I was going to say, according to the Old Testament Torah, like she was to exist outside the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she wasn't allowed to be a part of her community.
Right.
Which is all for me in my framework. There's always the deeper wounds that need healing. It's the true self, the internal self. Like, you know, from that regard, I take not that physical bodily healing can't factor into the healing of our whole self, but our true self. But our body isn't singularly our whole self, you know?
Right, yeah. I did have some notes on that story. Yeah, I this says so she touches him for physical healing, and Jesus allows for the physical healing, but then he stops the whole crowd. So that's another element of this that I was thinking about is like these healings aren't just for the person, they're for the community. And so this is what he does for her by kneeling down and telling her, like calling her daughter, your faith has made you whole. Like that is something the community needed to hear for their healing. So he's not just healing her, he's healing the whole community. By him making her whole, he's trying to make the entire community whole by pointing out that by healing her in this more in what we've been calling this deeper reality, this deeper healing. Her deepest wounds were isolation and shame and fear.
Right.
Those were the deep wounds. Those were the things that, and some of the fathers will talk about this, like you can be whole and not be physically healed, because the true wholeness is what she received after her physical healing. She received a physical healing, but the true wholeness was what he does after the physical healing, you know? And so, you know, that's a pretty common thing in the church fathers when they're talking about healing, is that there's a deeper healing that's needful for all of us. And sometimes there's a physical healing that's associated with that comes with that. But the deeper and more needful healing is that healing, the healing of her feeling alone and ashamed.
And what I really like about it is it's not just that, but it's, you've already said it, I'm just reiterating it, but it's the healing of the community at large, because it's not just healing her wounds. I mean, again, that is a huge part of it, that is a part of it, but restoring her back into her community is for the community at large. And I always try to emphasize that, because the Christianity that I grew up with was hyper individualized. It's all about your personal salvation, you know, it's all hyper individualization. But like I see this pattern over and over again, that it's not just about our personal salvation, our personal sozo or healing, but it's about the restoration of the community and ultimately the entire cosmos, you know. But
yeah, for sure. I've been thinking, whenever we decided to talk about this, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I'm not, I guess I'm going to say it because I've already started saying it, but like I wanted to kind of tell this story, like a personal story, but I guess I don't have to, I'm trying to decide how many details to give, because just in case, I don't want to like make anyone feel weird or anything.
Names and places will be changed to protect the identities of those involved.
Right. Well, there was a situation, right? There was a situation where someone came to church and we prayed for them to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a whole situation. And I felt I felt uncomfortable, honestly. In the moment, I felt pretty uncomfortable about what we were doing and the way we were doing it. And, it seemed as if that this person did not get healed for all of our efforts that night, right? This person didn't get healed. But then she gave her testimony. I said she. I meant they. They gave their
We
testimony.
don't know their pronouns.
Exactly. They gave their story, their testimony. After all the praying and the wailing and the who stole my Honda and all of that was done, she gave her testimony. And if here's what I was thinking. What I was thinking was, I hope that we all can get out of our heads enough to realize that there was healing there that night. If we were able to attend to it, if we could get out of our own heads about like, oh, we need it. Man, it didn't work. The prayers didn't work. I really thought we were going to heal this lady and it didn't work. If we could have just attended to her testimony, it could have healed the whole community.
Right. I mean, ultimately, that is really what I was talking about when I was talking about the contemplation prayer, and turning within, and that's what I'm talking about. Really, it is getting out of your own head and out of your own way, and realizing like this. It's not like our prayers if we would do this and do that, our prayers would work. It's like, no, God, anytime we see wholeness and healing and restoration and union, that is the action of God. That God is always at work.
Yeah.
Our role in that, our work in that is moving out of our own way enough to allow that to work through us.
Right.
Yeah. Which to me is what prayer is all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, was I there for that? I don't remember that.
I don't know.
Likely not.
I can give you more details later and maybe you'll realize whether you were or weren't there for it. But yeah, I don't know. I just, it's those situations. I really hope that we can keep the main thing. What's the old saying? To keep the main thing, right? Like the main thing is healing. And can we recognize healing when it comes and when it's there, even if it doesn't look like what we thought it would? I'm
going to say something that's going to sound very much like something you would say.
Ooh.
Which is going to be weird.
It is. I'm already weirded out by it.
But I mean, I would assume that most of the time we don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Why would we think that we would?
Yeah. Because it was obvious from her testimony, she's been made whole. Whether she's physically healed and right here and now or not, she's whole. You can hear that in her testimony. She's whole. And that's the thing that's most important. But I think we have a really hard time with that because we want, what is it? Jesus says it's an adult, wicked and perverse.
But the only sign that you're getting is the sign of Jonah.
The generation that asks for a sign. What is the wording that is it wicked and perverse?
Wicked and perverse sounds pretty good.
Or is it idolatrous? Because I think it is idolatrous either way. Actually, I think that's
same thing.
Because I really do think that like seeking sign. So I guess we have to be careful here because I don't want to say that like seeking someone's physical healing is idolatrous in and of itself, but seeking signs is, I think, like. Because that's what I think that that's what I think any physical healing that we see, any kind of like thing that we can point to and be like, or like, whatever, and you can make up any scenario. I guess like this person was born with like one leg shorter than the other and they prayed and now both their legs are, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
any example you can think of, like where there's something like an obvious like physical ailment and this person seems to be healed from it.
Yeah.
All of those things, just like all of Jesus's miracles, all of the healings, I think all of those things are signs pointing us to something. They aren't the thing themselves. But I think that if you make it the thing itself, if you're seeking signs in that sense, that you're making it the thing,
Yeah. I mean,
it's idolatrous.
I think an easy way to put it is like this. I think it's a good thing and a natural thing to hope for or wish for someone to be made better.
Yeah.
Made whole, healed, whatever word you want to use. If someone is struggling, I mean, cancer, I've watched people that I love be put in the ground from it. It's disgusting, painful, hard.
Yeah.
All the negative adjectives that you could use there.
Right.
So, obviously, anyone that, I would argue, anyone that is compassionate in any way would seek, desire that person's physical healing, right? I don't think that's what you're saying is the negative. That's the good aspect.
Right.
The negative aspect is attaching the sign aspect to it, or the wonder aspect to it, right? It's like I want this person to be healed, not necessarily because I have compassion on the suffering that they're experiencing, but for the sake of the sign itself, you know?
Right. Well, even like I'm not sure how to word this right. But like I guess what I'm saying is like, I mean, like for example, I think that we shouldn't mistake the sign for the destination, I guess is what I'm ultimately trying to say. Like whenever you are driving to Destin and you see a sign for Destin, that sign isn't Destin. It's just a sign pointing you to Destin, right?
So, I can't help it. I think about driving to Destin and sign, and the only one I can think of is the sign with the little devil, the red devil with a pitchfork on it that says "Go to church or you're going to hell."
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anybody that's been through Alabama on I-65 has surely seen that one.
Surely. No, but like to me, that's what all of these healings are. They are signs of the life of the age to come. They are signs of the resurrection, of the healing that awaits us all.
I'm a big fan of Tillich, so I prefer symbol instead of sign. But
right, I mean, it works either way.
It does.
But
it was a little Tillichian joke because he makes a big deal about the difference between symbol and sign. But
I mean, there may be one that I'm just not aware of at the moment. But like, I think it works. It seems to me it's applicable either way. It's a symbol or a sign of what awaits all of us, and I think, this wouldn't be satisfactory to anyone else really, I guess, but like to me, if everybody was always physically, emotionally, like just completely healed physically and made whole in that sozo way all the time, well, then we would just be living in the kingdom. This would be the eschaton. But I think it's pretty obvious that it's not yet. And so for now, we have these signs that are pointing to the ultimate reality, the finished work, however you want to word that. That's what any physical healing or any kind of healing is that occurs right now. It's a sign pointing to that. But I think that I really do think that God is more concerned with those deeper wounds being healed than whatever physical ailments that we find ourselves with,
Yeah. I don't know. I'm having a lot of thoughts flood me at one time, to be honest with you. And I don't know how many of them I want to come out my mouth and how many of them I want to just contemplate on a little more beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because ultimately I am, and this isn't even, when I say that, it's not even necessarily based on anything that you just said. It's just thoughts that have occur, that are flowing in and out of me throughout the whole conversation as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Because there is one aspect of me that, the more, because I've already brought up Tillich, right? There's that existentialist part of me that kind of recognizes that the decay and ultimate demise of our body, our inevitable death, is really the thing that we're overcoming in our existential, like that is the human condition. That's the anxiety of the human condition that we're trying to overcome. And so I think it's that death is inevitable. But then there's that other aspect of me that hears a lot of what you're saying and does embrace the idea of wholeness, and trying to find a middle ground there. That's,
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't really have anything else to say about it.
I mean, I do think that death is inevitable. Like, I mean, some people may want to quibble about that, but I think that death is inevitable. I think I've said it before. I don't think Jesus saves us from dying. He
Right.
saves us through death. It's and like, I mean, in everyone that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Dude still died.
You don't know that.
But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, it's just trying to figure out how to work that into the idea of wholeness, and God's will is healing and wholeness. And you know what I'm saying? But also acknowledging that, like, yeah, but everybody dies, even
Yeah.
like,
yeah, because I think that everything is temporary.
Yeah.
In that sense. I think that there is an ultimate resurrection for Lazarus in which he will never die. But I think that, Lazarus did die. Everyone that Jesus healed eventually got sick and died again.
Yeah, I really think that, as I'm thinking about this, is why I said I wasn't sure if I wanted to contemplate on it more before I let it come out of my mouth, but and just said it anyway. But now that I'm thinking about it, I really do think it just circles back to what we were actually just talking about previously, about the why. Like, even if someone does experience healing in their physical body, it's not really about the physical healing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I would suppose that somebody, even if they had received some sort of physical healing and then ultimately got sick again and died, they still got the healing that they needed, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And if they haven't received it in this life, they will. That's my hope anyway.
I mean, the really, really hard thing about it, and I think that we'll get there eventually anyway, is that's easy to say with someone who's experienced the normal sicknesses and who've been maybe healed once from their cancer, but then they came back and they still lived until they'll be about 60 and then they passed away. That's a little bit different than some of the horrific things that, like, children experience, which I know that
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk about that at some point, but
yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's a good time to transition.
yeah, I think that might be the next one. Actually, it's not quite the next one, but yeah. So my closing statement on this one,
Okay.
and I think you'll like this one too, because it's pretty much just sums up what we've been talking about, which is the pattern in Scripture isn't that God chooses sometimes, but that healing always points beyond itself. Some stories show the beauty of restoration, others of grace in unhealed places.
Yeah. I dig it.
Which is, like I said, ultimately just saying that it's not about the physical healing, even if that's something that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the sozo healing, becoming whole.
And that's ultimately what the church fathers say, particularly those in the East, like from the Alexandrian and the Cappadocian tradition, like all of those guys, like all of them are pretty unanimous on that, like would agree with that sentiment. I think that, like, the any healing that occurs in this life, any physical healing, it's not the point, and it's ultimately temporary. The guy that Jesus healed his eyes, like that guy, if he lived to be an old man, he eventually got crappy eyesight again anyway. You know what I mean? Like anyone that was healed eventually got sick again and died, or they died, you know, regardless. So, yeah, I think that seems to me to be right, and like what you said, and seems to be right in line with my view, and my view is informed a lot by that church tradition.
Well, look at me
So.
being all patristic.
Yeah, that it really is funny. I like so much. It's funny because I really think that a lot of what you say just is at least a specific strand of Orthodox Christianity, but then there's like those big things that would make you Orthodox that we do disagree on, but like
Right.
everything else is like, well, it's just kind of common language for the early church fathers,
Right. Actually, as I was writing out my notes for this episode, I thought I might surprise you a little.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
I anticipated that we would probably be in alignment on a lot of the stuff. We would have different language. But I thought that most of the disagreements that we've had in the past have been mostly miscommunications more so than disagreements.
Yeah, I think so.
On this topic specifically.
Right.
So I thought that perhaps I might surprise you a little in this one.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So the third question?
Third question. I didn't write down the questions, by the way.
Oh, okay. I've got them. How do we hold the tension between God's power, He is able, and God's wisdom? I don't know if you care about this question.
I mean, not particularly for me, but I'm happy to talk about it. Like,
So it's how do we hold the tension between God's power, meaning He is able, and God's wisdom, meaning He knows what we actually need? So, like, this says it gets into the whole bread and stone metaphor. Maybe we're praying for one kind of bread, but the Father sees it's actually not what would give life. So
yeah, I mean, I guess I was just drawing the comparison between the two. Like, how would I define each, right? Like, the what I wrote down for God's power, the divine power, not force, but the enabling presence that upholds life, right? I mean, again, for me, God is the ground of being, not a. This one really comes through in the difference between the view of God as a being versus the God as the ground of being, right? Like, and then the wisdom is sort of shapes how that force is applied, right? So those are kind of two different things, I guess. But yeah, I don't think that God's wisdom holds back or anything. I don't know. It is a little bit weird to even try to like. That's not language that I would probably use personally.
right. That's why I kind of said I don't know if you even want to go with this question or not.
I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. Like I said, it's just for my framework. It's not really it's not language I would use typically,
Yeah, I think the question was generated from the whole bread and stone thing, which we've kind of already talked about a little bit. But like, if God being able to answer your prayer, but like knowing that the answer, what you actually would be praying or are praying in your innermost self, in your um, the Christ in you, that deep place of faith within you actually is praying this, as the Holy Spirit intercedes, for you on your behalf. Like that deep part, deepest part of you does want what is the will of God for your life, but we don't always know, like the connection between our deepest and truest self and what comes up here and out of our mouths is not always the same, and so
do you feel any tension in that respect with the idea of like, because you can reduce that down to saying like, well, then God can't achieve that wholeness without like using cancer or
mm, So what are you naming this attention? I guess.
Well, I guess what I'm asking you if you feel tension there in that idea of like, because ultimately what we're saying in saying that sometimes that physical healing doesn't occur is essentially because we don't know what we're asking. We don't need that physical healing. We need to suffer through whatever it is that we're suffering through in order to actually get our wholeness, our actual true person, true human healed. But isn't that like saying that, like, in order for you to achieve your highest self, your healing that you need, God has to employ like cancer or evil?
No, I don't think so. I don't think God employs those things because I don't think God causes your sickness. I think that you just get sick. I don't think that God is actively making you sick or actively causing
Right.
illnesses.
I mean, I'm not really implying that God is. I'm just saying that, like, I feel a tension, and because I frame it in my notes, I'm not disagreeing with you, but what I am saying is that I do feel a tension in it because, in a sense, when we say like, well, sometimes you don't get your physical healing because there's a deeper reason, and we don't always know what that is, but kind of what we're naming is that because in order for your true being to reach its sozo healing, you need to suffer through whatever it is that you're suffering through. That's kind of like saying God couldn't achieve that wholeness by, if he healed you, then you wouldn't achieve that wholeness, right? Like God, that almost is like saying God has to allow you to suffer through cancer in order to achieve your wholeness, even though he may not have caused it. Like, if you know what I'm trying to say? Like, to me, it almost is that idea of like, God, you even if God wasn't the root cause of it, if we hold that God can heal us and that he doesn't need evil to achieve whatever it is that he's trying to achieve, then theoretically he could take my cancer away and still heal me. But he chooses not to. That means he's choosing to employ sickness, disease, violence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did have some stuff on that, but
I didn't really make any notes on it because I didn't think about it too much until we were just talking about it, and then it came up. I mean,
let me see if I can, because like basically I asked. I mean that's kind of where I was going earlier, I guess. Like physical healing is always temporary. So I mean, I guess if it's a matter of like, I mean, it's not something that I have a great answer for, really.
yeah.
But like I understand what you're saying. Like if he can do both,
If you had a great answer for it, I'd think you were full of shat. But
like if God can do both, like right now, why not?
right.
And that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like I think that there is for one, I think that if God always did both, then I think that would be, in a sense, bringing about the eschaton prematurely. But I mean, I think that to me, I see the tension. Like I know what you're saying. I don't think that God uses those things to bring about our healing, but I think that God knows that there are things that if this thing was taken away, it may be that God in God's wisdom knows that like if this thing was taken away, the deeper healing would be harder to come by. It's possible. Like, that's a possible thing to say about it. But like I was saying before that, I ultimately think that like I mean, even if we're gonna say God can do both and God chooses not to do the one over the other, I still think that we have to contend with the fact that like all of it is temporary anyway. And again, it is the whole bread and stone thing. Like I think that there may be some things that we just don't know, that we're asking for stones instead of bread. But
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't have a good answer for it. It's a huge factor into why I employ non-interventionalism. To be honest, like I wouldn't say it reduces down only to that, but it's certainly a huge factor into why I kind of lean into that ideology. So yeah, I definitely don't have a good answer for it, but obviously I feel the tension in it.
yeah, I mean, I just think that
Any way that you frame it, there's just different things that you can say, really. I mean, because where my mind goes with it is the aspect of like ultimately how I think it works through like not as with God as the ground of being and not some being that like intervenes within the natural order of things, is that we always have God working in us and all of creation towards wholeness, but we have to align ourselves with that, in order to achieve it, which is what I was talking about with like in saying align ourselves with that, praying and then allowing that prayer to move me to help heal someone, however I can participate in their healing. You know what I mean? So like that sort of is how I view like that idea of. And I wrote that note under this section because of power and wisdom. Again, we've already talked about how those are kind of weird in my framework anyway. So that's why I wrote all this in this section. But yeah, because then that really does like that factor does. It sort of removes this idea of God is choosing to employ physical healing on this person and is choosing not to physically allow this person, this child, to just struggle with disease and illness their entire life. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of, I don't know. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, I think that there is a point in which, I mean, I'm not using mystery to just get out of the question, but I do think that there is a level of mystery involved here.
I mean, for the record, this is one of the examples where I think that mystery would be an acceptable answer.
Yeah. I mean, I had some stuff in my notes, but I mean, I don't know. I don't want to just sit here and read the notes.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that part of what's going on in all of this, and this isn't, if you don't believe in an afterlife or resurrection, all that stuff, then it may not mean anything. But I do think that, like, again, all of these things are temporary and they're all signs that point to a greater reality that is to come, that there is a healing and a wholeness that is going to be and is in one sense already accomplished for all of creation, the entire cosmos, including everyone that we know or don't know that is sick or in need, or whatever the need is. Like there is an ultimate healing that's a greater healing than we can ever experience. It's just like Paul says that in the sufferings of this life are not worthy of comparison, to the glory that is to come. Like there is a glorious healing and wholeness that awaits every one of us. And so ultimately, whatever sufferings, and I know that sucks to hear in the moment. I know that that's not satisfactory if you're someone who's in extreme pain every day of your life. Like I understand that. And I don't mean to be dismissive of that in any way, but I cannot not have hope that in the end, whatever sufferings we endure in this life, it is not worthy of comparison to what awaits us. So
I'm fine with it. I don't have any rebuttal. Yeah, I mean, on this topic, I really don't have anything else to add, to be honest.
We haven't talked as much about children suffering, but that's
the next question, actually.
Is it?
Yeah. I didn't write the question down, but the topic was suffering of innocent is what I wrote. So I'm assuming this was the question about that.
Yeah. How do we make sense of cases where deeper spiritual or relational healing seems unlikely, like with a child's suffering, without slipping into harmful explanations or dismissing God's compassion?
Which this is really, to me, that just takes sort of some of the stuff that we were just talking about to the kind of the extreme end of it, right? There are some people who were born as babies into this world who experience nothing but physical and emotional and spiritual trauma the entirety of their existence.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
how do we make sense of that? It's one thing to say, like, oh, this person didn't get this healing from their their cancer or whatever, heart disease, whatever physical ailment they had, because there's a deeper spiritual, they needed to go through that trial in order to develop their sozo. But like, that's a harder buy for someone who's experienced nothing but pain and trauma their entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And ultimately, the first thing I wrote down was, we don't know why. I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I think that is probably the most honest answer you could ever give, honestly. I mean, I think that the only other thing that I would add to that, I guess, maybe is, I think that this is a point in which the fathers tend to appeal to mystery.
Yeah.
I do think that here's what I do want to say about children and that type of suffering. Number one, and this is true for everyone, but in particular, it needs to be said about children. God is not causing any of it. And God is with and in every one of them, suffering with them and as them. And all of that suffering points to the cross, and he is suffering with us, and the other thing I think to say about that is that I think rather than your suffering being needed or being used, or not even being needed or used, but like just being there being some deeper reality, some deeper meaning, or some deeper truth that is revealed in the suffering or whatever. Like, I think that for children, the only deeper truth that I think that points us to is the need for new creation. Is that there is a gone wrongness in the world. There is a healing that the entire cosmos needs. Like, I think that points us to the brokenness of the world in a deeper way for children than it does for adults, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I wrote down a lot of those same things actually in my notes. I mean, ultimately, to be honest, this is the number one reason why I embrace that non-interventionalist idea that I do. I hit on it in the previous, section that we were talking about there. But this sort of just drives the point home for me of like the fact that there are children who are sex trafficked, the fact that there are children who are born, the fact that St. Jude's exists.
right.
I am personally, at this point in my life, I'm unable to believe in a God who heals physically like that, which again, it all goes back to how we define things and how we phrase things, because like what I'm talking about is again leaning back, not critiquing anything that you've said, but more so just my history and the way that I used to view things, where I viewed God as I'm praying to this being who's going to zap this tumor out of me or whatever. Like I can't. The fact that these children exist in the world, I can't do it. Like if God is choosing to heal certain people, to answer certain prayers, to heal certain people, but these children still exist suffering the way they do in the world, then I'll not worship that God. I cannot. That's not a good God, in my opinion. Like, I just can't do it. And so I've had to adapt my framework.
Yeah. And I understand. I understand that.
Which
It's a hard one.
ultimately, that's, so the note I wrote for that goes along with that is a non-interventionalist God removes the idea that God chooses not to heal a child. It's not, why didn't God step in to stop this? Why didn't God stop this? And it changes that question to, why is the world still like this?
Yeah.
And then I actually think you'll like this. I wrote down a quote from Gregory of Nyssa.
Mm-hmm.
Or a paraphrasing of a quote, let's say. So suffering is part of the ongoing finished journey of creation toward God. And so I would attribute the fact that these atrocities exist to the fact that the world is not healed. The world isn't sozoed.
Yeah.
And these things will exist until the world is healed.
Mm-hmm.
And we can all toss out our theories as to why we got into the situation that we did. What's our interpretation of the creation narrative and the fall of human beings, and how did all this disease and evil end up? I mean, we can give our own opinions on that and theories and whatnot. But the ultimate reality of it is that we don't know why this exists, and we know that it does exist.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what we're working towards, is eliminating that, is creating a world where this doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So on this, for example, on this topic of like childhood illness that we were talking about, I don't think that comes from removing any sort of funding from cancer research. So to, as an example, like that's, to me, employing that research and trying to find a cure for cancer is doing God's work in the world, and God at work in the world, not tossing up this prayer to this distant God thinking that he's going to take away this kid's suffering. No, we work towards eliminating. We are the hands and feet of God in action on this earth. And it's our responsibility to see that suffering of those children and have compassion on them and their families, and do everything that we can to cure, heal, and restore life to these families,
Yeah.
Yeah, my ultimate statement for this one, my sort of summary statement was, if God is the ground of being, then a child's suffering is not God's refusal, but is a tragedy that God shares with us.
Yeah. I'll read a church father quote myself. It goes right along with that. It's from John Chrysostom. He says, "Children do not suffer alone. Christ suffers in them." I have a Gregory Nyssa quote also, actually. And Gregory lost a young brother. I don't remember exactly how young he was, but he was someone who was acquainted with the loss of children. And he says, "Where reason fails, love remains." And so I can't explain it. I don't know. But love remains. Like I know that Christ is these children do not suffer alone. Christ suffers in them and with them and as them. And just as Christ's own sufferings led to death, but led through death into resurrection and new life. So it will for everyone and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else for it, to be honest. I mean, that's sort of it's a heavy part of the topic. I
Yeah.
mean, like I said, it's the one thing that's probably shaped my views on this topic more than anything else, if I'm being honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm with you, by the way, as far as like the whole like it it should drive us to look at the world around us and think like we have to be like the Christ within you should be driving you to be the hands and feet, right? It should be moving you to, in whatever sense you can, heal, make whole those around you in whatever way you can. You know, it should be doing that. I just go the one step further, I guess, and say that I do think that the miraculous is possible because I feel like I've witnessed it myself. So
Yeah, I always go back to my experience. I've told the story on this show probably a couple of times actually, but I always go back to my experience in Honduras. And I'll remember it was the day that we did the community event in Honduras, and because we were right down in their little town, where these people are living in, you know, their houses aren't what we're used to here.
Yeah.
To say.
Yeah.
And I'm watching these people come we're giving them food because they're hungry people. And I was a little bit angry, if I'm being honest. Like, and this was, you got to remember, this was sort of towards the end of the trip. I'd already like been angry when we went to Miss Lorena's house, and like I got angry, and I was dealing with that throughout the whole week, really. And I was just thinking, like looking around, thinking like, if God acts in the world in the way that he's been taught to me, then he has no excuse for this. Where is God? That God that I have been fed my whole life has no excuse. And then it wasn't like an audible voice. I'm not even going to say that, but it was like, but I could almost hear it in a way. And it was like, what are you talking about? You're here. And I turn around and I see Keith throwing a football with a group of kids who were having the time of their life. And it hit me then. It's stuck with me to this day. I never forget it. That's where, like, my views on this whole thing sort of shifted into the direction they did. That was where the kind of the start of it was. I realized in that moment, like, what do you mean, what is God doing? We're here throwing a football. We're feeding food to these people. There's people. There's tables set inside where they're listening to these people share whatever's troubling them. There's two people over here at the swimming pool dealing with people who need something, that are pouring out their heart and soul. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean, where's God? He's here, obviously. Like, what do you think you're doing here? You know what I mean? And then that's where like, I've never forgot that feeling that I had in that moment, which was like, no, it doesn't look like what you've been taught it looks like. It doesn't look like what you've been taught your whole life. And you're right. And this is how I'm having this conversation with myself. So when I say, and you're right, I'm talking to me, to myself, saying, and you're right to think that God doesn't have an excuse, like, in my opinion. Like, yeah, like, that's why, I mean, that, in my opinion, that's what took me towards that was a step in the direction that I am now.
Right.
So, but yeah, in other words, I take that very seriously.
Right. Yeah, I feel you.
Which leads in right into the next category, which is community.
Yeah. How do we walk as a community of healing, praying for the sick, caring for them, believing for miracles, and yet being shaped by Christ even when healing doesn't come? Yeah. All kinds of healing.
Yeah. The main thing I wrote there is the community of healing should be a sacrament of wholeness. It's the context where healing happens. but as what we've already talked about, healing is a wholeness of being, right? So it should be when we're talking about the context that healing happens, we're talking about being present for people. We're talking about compassion for people who are suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and like providing medical care, emotional care, therapy, uh, financial support. Like all of these things are a part of healing. They're a part of wholeness. And as a community, that's our responsibility. That is part of our responsibility, and that's what I was talking about with going to Honduras and being in service to those people to attempt to. That's what it's to me. That's what a community of healing is about. It's about when people's SNAP benefits are pulled out from under them, and they don't know how they feed their family. It looks like a community coming together to hand out boxes of food. That's what a community of healing looks like.
Right. Yeah.
It may not be what we expect. Going back to why would we expect we know what healing looks like? We're looking for someone to stand up out of a wheelchair who's been a paraplegic their whole life, and that's a miracle of healing. No, like someone received a miracle of healing when we were passing out baskets of food to them because they wasn't sure how they were going to feed their baby.
Right.
You don't know what kind of healing took place because of that.
Right. Yeah.
To me, that's what a community of healing is about. The statement that I wrote, I'm pretty proud of this one. I think you'll like it too, but I'm pretty proud of this. It was the best one yet. Best one I did of the whole thing. It says, a healthy church is less concerned with producing miracles and more concerned with becoming one.
Yeah.
To me, that's what a community of healing looks like.
Yeah. Right. I'm with you on that. For sure.
But it's hard to say what exactly that looks like because it can take any form.
Yeah.
Maybe it looks like handing out boxes on, to people who lose their SNAP benefits. Maybe it looks like just showing compassion on the church group me when somebody reaches out and is going through a hard time, and it's just saying, hey, I'm here for you. Maybe it's texting somebody when you know that they're going through a hard time. Maybe it's XYZ. There's no limit to what this healing can look like and what our role in someone's healing can take.
Yeah.
But we all have a role to play in it.
Right. Yeah. I don't really have much to add to that, I guess. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, the only thing I guess I would add is that I do think there is a place for prayer for needs as well, in addition to, not instead of, but in addition to. It goes back to the whole both thing for me.
Well, I mean, you're not going to hear me complain about praying for people as long as you do it.
Yeah.
I can't remember the quote. It's always said that it's like you pray for the hungry and then you feed them. That's how prayer works. I think it was attributed to Pope Francis or Benedict or one of them. But
yeah.
But anyway, that's as long as we're go pray for everybody. But do so in a way that produces action.
Yeah, and if you can be the answer to the prayer, be the answer in whatever way you can. Yeah, like that what you said there was perfect, really. Rather than attempting at trying to create this identity as a place where miracles. Or how did you say it?
Yeah, instead of I want to make sure I say it right. A healthy church is less concerned with producing miracles, and more concerned with becoming one.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're trying to make producing miracles, right? Like that's what we get, but like our community is the miracle. Like, just like, I mean, again, I thought the perfect example was passing out the food baskets, when on the Wednesday nights when people weren't receiving their SNAP.
Yeah.
That's not trying to generate that's not attempting to generate miracles. That's actually becoming the miracle. You became someone's miracle.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah. I had a ton of quotes from church fathers. I didn't get to read very many of them.
I even read one. I did say this, and I'm now, as the conversation went on, I wrote this note down because I wanted to send this out as a clarifier, and now the way the conversation's gone, I don't even know if I want to say it.
Okay.
It's not it's not really a negative thing. I wanted to say it as a clarifier, and now that we've made it to where we are, I'm afraid it may muddy the waters even more. Because because of all the reasons that we've talked about with I'm wholly committed to the idea of the non-interventionalism. But I wanted to clarify because there is an aspect of unexplained healing does happen. And I think that and some people would point to that and see like that's an act of God. And like on a semantic level, I don't really disagree with that. I think any sort of act is an act of God. Any sort of act towards healing, not any act in general, but any sort of act towards wholeness or restoration is an act of God. So in a sense, I don't disagree with that. And I think what I'm more getting at is that I don't think that God, number one, I don't believe in God as a being. I believe God is a ground of being. I don't think there's a God out there choosing. Right. I view it more of like, I've used the analogy before of like God flowing through us as like a pipe. And it's an analogy, so it's not a perfect, obviously none of it is, right? But like if your pipe's gunked up, not a lot of good's getting through, right?
Right.
But if the valve is open and things are flowing freely through you, then so I don't know. But anyway, I think that the position I take on some of those unexplained healings is that I think, and maybe this is just my skepticism in general, but I think in almost, I would say all of those situations, if we could run every sort of medical test there is, we would find some sort of natural explanation for all of them. But that doesn't mean it's not an act of God. That's the right. That's why this is hard to talk about, and that's why when I was thinking about how I wanted to express this on this topic, I knew it was going to be hard to fully get people to articulate my position. Because my position is just because something happens, just because we could run a medical test and find out that it happened because of XYZ and we have a scientific explanation for it, doesn't mean it's not an act of God.
Right.
But that also doesn't mean that God is choosing to heal this person and not the other, right? He's not sending this divine healing and choosing to allow this child to suffer either. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a hard thing to sort of navigate.
Yeah. I mean, it does get weird whenever you are talking to me. It can get weird because it does become a thing of like, where are we drawing lines then? Because in one sense, if by natural we mean like doctor, the God worked through the doctors or the medicine or whatever it was to heal this person. Well, when the doctor doesn't heal that person, isn't that also God in them not healing?
Well, that's where I would draw and I mean, this is where we get into the nuance of how we how we make this work in our own minds, right? But for me, the way I explain that away is that's the human aspect of it, right? That's what I was talking about with the synergy and it's not as though everything is God and everything that happens is God, because yes, to that point you have to acknowledge every failure. At that point you can't say God didn't give that person cancer. Every act that occurs is God, right? But I think that we are agents acting in the world. I mean, it goes back to what we talked about before with free will, and I'm a compatibilist with free will. I think we have a free-ish will. I do think that that we are free agents. To say that God works through us doesn't mean that God is controlling us or what's the word I'm looking for? Where a spirit would just take hold of somebody and you know what I'm trying to say? Possess.
Yeah.
Possess us.
Right, but even then, I think that it's not as if, because make it a sort of free will thing, I think you would have to get into the person's motives. Like it's not as if any doctor is ever choosing not to heal someone.
No,
You know
I
what I
understand. Yeah, and I didn't mean to imply it like that. I was only using that as an example that we're free agents, like we're acting in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I think that we are. So,
To that extent, yes. If God is only, if on your, I guess on your model, if God's only acting in us, and I don't know that if I disagree with that or not. Actually, something I need to think more about. But if God is only acting through us, I got distracted by my own
well,
thoughts.
I was trying not to distract you because I would throw a caveat even to that. Is like I don't think when I say God is only acting through, I wouldn't even say us. But that can be because we're talking about it as if God is acting through a doctor or whatever. But I think that can be your own immune system too.
Right.
Some people have different immune systems that overcome illnesses through their own immune system. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't have the explanations for all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think for me, the big difference is saying that God chooses to act in this way, as saying like God makes a conscious decision to take this tumor out of this person. Now, I'm going to allow all these children over here to starve to death. And these children over here are going to suffer their entire existence through sex trafficking. And these over here, but I'm going to help that person. Like I can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
So I've got to figure out some way to get around it.
Yeah. I mean, this is an area that this is something that, is gonna probably, I mean, I would assume is going to evolve over time. For me, I'm gonna have to think about it more, pray about it more, learn more about it, and see, you know, but everything I said, I think is where I'm at today. Like I do think that for me, I do think it's both. I think that God acts through us and that and through our prayers, which is acting through us also, just through prayer
Yeah.
and action.
Yeah, I mean, I think
You know?
in summary, I think that that's really the only difference between me and you. I think that we're pretty well, it seems at the end of the conversation, it seems like to me and you are pretty well in lockstep with most everything. It seems like you take an additional step that it's not really that I'm not, well, I guess it is accurate to say I'm not willing to take. I think there are more negatives that come along with that extra step than that offset, that to me, that's why I don't take that extra step. But I think that extra step is the only difference between us.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, all of your reasons for that are valid. Whether I agree or not,
Right.
I think that they're valid. I understand where you're coming from. I mean, it really is. I mean, I hate to simplify it to that extent, to oversimplify it, but like, I mean, it is the age-old problem of the problem of evil and suffering. That is essentially what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Or that's where
The implications lead to,
yeah, it's the source of the disagreement, I think. It's like how we handle that. And it goes back to like we've talked about this before in other areas, like the open and relational seems to make more sense to you in that regard, at least some version of it.
Yeah.
That would align with your more Talikian views. But for me, I am more in line with that classical theist view.
Right.
And so, at least I think I am. I don't know. don't think I'm an open and relational guy necessarily. I mean, relational for sure. I guess when I say open and relational, I really am talking about open theism specifically, as far as like in terms of God's interacting in the world and God's knowing and
Right. See, I actually wouldn't consider myself an open and relational theist either. Although there was a point in our conversation tonight where I haven't actually thought about it in a long time. There was a point in our conversation tonight where I made a mental note. I was like, that sounds a lot like open. Like I think open and relational theism works a lot better here, to be honest. Like sort of ticked that box in my head at the time, but I at this point I wouldn't really consider myself open and relational. I don't think, but maybe I am. I don't know. Something I need to study more.
Yeah, there may be a way to work it into Tillich's system, but I don't know. I mean, at least based on what I know about open theism from Tom Ward, I know that he views God specifically as a being.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that specifically the version of open and relational theism that I'm most familiar with is Ord's framework, which I really like. I just don't think God's a being, and he seems to be pretty emphatic that he is.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the same things work in that regard. You maybe just have to change some things. I don't know. I'll have to think through it. It's not something I thought about in a while.
Yeah. You know what? This might be a shocker to you, but perhaps God is both.
Open and relational?
Being and a being.
Yeah. Maybe, but I don't think so.
Being and becoming?
I think you have
all in on paradox.
I think you have to embrace that. With I would argue, if you were to ask me, I think that your beliefs make you believe that God is both the ground of being and a being, and I don't think you have a choice in that.
Perhaps.
I mean, I don't mean that in a negative way. That's my interpretation of your theology.
Yeah, it may be. It's something I'd have to explore some more. I mean, I do believe God to be the ground of being. I don't know if I can articulate it well enough. Here's the other thing, is like, because we have come from certain places, it's like I almost don't know how to say the things without just saying stuff I've said before. You know what I mean? So like it's it kind of part of it is learning a new language, like learning language to explain what you actually do mean.
Right. That's one of the hardest things I've found since I've made, because I did used to have more of a classical theist view where I viewed God as a being, the being of beings, the being among beings, the highest of all beings. And now I don't. I think God's the ground of all existence, the ground of all being, And so, but most of the people that I talk to don't employ that kind of language. And so the language of being, of like I'm talking about a being, is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He, him, and just the sort of anthropomorphic language that we use to speak of it is, in a lot of ways, it's troubling. Not troubling like troubles me, but I mean it's troubling in that it causes problems, because it portrays, when I use it, employ it, it portrays something that I don't really mean, that's easily to be misunderstood by people who don't hold that same framework that I do. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm new to it relatively. I'm still trying to figure out the language and how to best articulate what I mean. So, yeah. Language is a big one. I've been thinking a lot about that. I told you about that through text the other day. I thought some about that, about how, I mean, me and you for sure have straight up disagreements that we see differently. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But I also do think sometimes we just miscommunicate because of, not that it's either one of our faults, but it's the way that our different journeys are evolving, plus where we come from, is trying to, like you said, learn a new language or learn how to communicate in a different way. It can cause streams to get crossed at times.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things for me that I've realized, I've already told you this, but when I came, I got a deeper understanding of some of our disagreements when I sort of got that understanding of the more sort of top down epistemology versus bottom up, and the way that we see the world a bit differently, and why we have trouble articulating that. Because to me, a lot of times the only thing that I don't have language to explain what I'm trying to get across from you, other than like, well, what you're saying is disconnected from reality, right? Like I say that all the time, and as if you're going to understand what I mean when I say that for the 100th time, when you didn't get it the 99 times before that. You know what I mean? Because from my perspective, that's what it is. But now that I can see more of your perspective of it, I understand. I mean, to me, it is still disconnected from reality. Don't get me wrong, but I understand.
It is reality.
Right. But I understand why you say that now. I know what you mean when you say that.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of what I was hinting at earlier whenever we were talking about, I brought up a couple times the idea of nature.
Yeah.
What we're calling nature.
Right. I knew what you meant.
Yeah. Nature versus supernature versus like the natural and unnatural.
Right.
Because to me, the sickness, disease, all those things, the brokenness of the world is the unnatural. It's not natural. The natural is the sozo. You know? So to me, it's not unnatural for someone to receive healing. It is natural. It's the natural overcoming the unnatural. It's the kingdom invading the here and now. You know? The finished work. Finishing now. All that stuff.
Yeah, I actually figured you would talk more about that in this episode, to be honest. It just didn't go that way, though.
Finished work. I mean, I feel like I hit it a pretty good amount.
I mean, you hit the finished work. I just meant more about the sort of like what I mean, because I knew that you were hinting towards that when you said the natural, but we never really talked sort of about we didn't dive into it, but we've talked about it at length in other episodes. I think if anybody's watched our previous episodes, they know what we're talking about.
I think we've talked about healings before, and it came up in that one.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the name of that one, or I would say go listen to that one, you filthy animals.
Probably don't listen to it. This one was probably better.
This one probably was better. It was at least more current. Our positions have both evolved on it. So.
That's the thing, man. I probably could go. Well, I know for me, for sure, I could go and listen to earlier episodes and come away a lot different. Like if we revisited them now, they would be a lot different. But
yeah,
I'm sure it would be that way for both of us too, because we've been doing this show for a while now.
Well, one of the first, sorry, one of the first topics that we did was Christian Universalism. Did 4 episodes on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be one worth revisiting or not.
Yeah, we talked a lot about it at the beginning of the show, at the genesis of the Back Pew Convos.
And it's come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
In other conversations, in other contexts, but yeah.
You know, I think I would give a different perspective on it. It would for sure be something that I would have a different view on than I had when we recorded those, but yet not different. Oh, this time I'm going to play the middle. I'm going to play the both this time. No, I still think the reason why, just to give a quick synopsis of it, the reason why I say that is because I think all of the, I'm not as sure of as many specifics today as I would have been back then. But I still think that all of the underlying reasons, let's just use that word, are still as applicable today as ever. As to like why, I don't know what the afterlife looks like, but I sure as hell know it don't look like this. That's more of my perspective now than it was back then.
It can't look like someone living a miserable life, having some sort of incurable disease, not receiving healing, and then burning for all of eternity in hell.
Exactly.
It can't look like that.
I don't know what it looks like, but it doesn't look like that.
Right.
And that's more of my position now. Whereas before, I would probably have used a little more like, this is what I think. Today, the afterlife is one of those things where I'm pretty like, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I know it's not this and this and this, but I don't know what it is, you know?
Yeah, I would be maybe, actually, would be more, not quite what you said, I don't think, but like probably less like willing to try to explain what I think it is and isn't.
Yeah.
But the only thing I do know is that whatever, I do believe in some sort of resurrected life, new creation, new heaven, new earth. I do believe in that. And I believe that it is, whatever it is, beats the hell out of this place. It beats the hell out of the hell that exists here on earth, where you have children enduring that kind of suffering that we've talked about, and people in general, and animals, and all of creation is groaning, right, for the revealing of the sons of God. All of creation is groaning in pains, like childbirth pains, is bringing. There is new creation coming, and when we see healings, when we see sozo, even when we don't see it in that sense, but we can recognize sozo in spite of what seems to be a lack of physical healing. Like all of that is the kingdom coming. It is the crowning, right? If we're using the childbirth analogy, it's the kingdom is at hand. Anyway,
I have seen a crowning before. It's not really a beautiful sight. It's not a pleasant sight. I guess it is beautiful in its own way.
exactly.
But not in the way that we would traditionally define beauty.
Well, isn't that actually 100% applicable, though?
Yeah,
to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. That's why I was hesitating and I was thinking through what I was trying to say, because as I was saying it, I was like, this actually is probably exactly right.
Yeah, because right now in the crowning, in the pushing, it can be. It's extremely painful. The brokenness of the world does. It ought to pain us. It ought to, not in a way that's paralyzing, but in a way that causes us to pray, that causes us to act.
Yeah, I mean,
the world.
think about like if you were to lay your hand on a hot stove, like what does that cause you to do?
Yeah.
Right? It causes you to act. Like it's painful.
Yeah.
It is painful, but not like, oh, I'm in so much pain. I'm just going to keep my hand. No, now you do something about it. It's that doing something being remove your hand off the source of pain or whatever, like.
Right.
So.
But, yeah, and that it can, the world, you can look around the world and you can see glimmers of hope, and you can see healings, like you can see sozo, and you can see that there is beauty in the ugliness, in the pain and the hell that we experience here and now. There is hope, and there is beauty in it, but it's still pretty ugly and painful for the moment. But there is joy in the morning, right?
I dig it.
And so that's where my eschatology is. I mean, I guess at some future date we could go, and it's been a while since I've like given a full on like, this is the reason why I believe this, and like give all, like get into the scriptures and all that kind of stuff. Which maybe we could do that. Maybe at one time we talked about talking more about annihilation. Haven't done that. I will say that if it turned out that Christian Universal, like, well, that's so hard for me to even say, because it's like, at this point, I don't know that there's anything that would convince me that to at least hope that that's what's the case. But like if there was any other option, it would probably be some form of annihilationism or conditional mortality, probably more likely. But eternal conscious torment is just like, it's just a no-go. It just doesn't make any sense of scripture. It doesn't make any sense of anything.
Right.
Of the
Yeah. I think if it's not some form of universalism where some sort of life consciousness continues on the other side, so to speak, then I probably just don't believe in anything, which I guess would be a form of annihilationism. But I think other than that, I would either have to believe that you just die and then you die, that's it, or some form of the only way that this isn't precise language, but it's the only language I could put to it is a sort of non-dualism to where we just return to our we return to the ground of being. You know what I mean? Like that's the only sort of way that I could conceptualize it. That's not some form of universalism where you continue to have a consciousness after you die. None of those are like eternal conscious torment, though.
Yeah. I have some questions about that, but maybe I can ask them off air. We've been going for a while now.
I don't know if I have any answers, but
the folks are tired of hearing us talk, surely.
Well, fine then.
Over 2.5 hours.
Get out of here.
Okay. Bye.